Somebody, do we have our presentation ready?
Yes, I'm sharing the screen right now.
Yes, I'm sharing the screen right now.
Do you have YouTube open? The YouTube
Do
link?
you have YouTube open?
I did. Let's see. Should I close it?
Yes.
Let me close it.
Or at least put it on silence or something. Like mute it.
I just closed it. Does it
Okay.
matter? No, it's still.
I don't think so. It's fine.
Okay, good.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thanks for everyone for coming. We'll be starting momentarily.
Miss Womack, I think it's your.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, there's no feedback now.
Yeah,
Good.
I had to turn on my thing.
Okay, great.
So let's see here. This should be a little bit better.
Welcome. We have a few students already on the call. We're gonna wait for a couple more minutes and then we're gonna get started.
Hi, Russell.
How you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see Malcolm's here with me as well.
Where's Malcolm? Hi, Malcolm. Good to see you too. Hey, I saw your emails and I'm going to get back with you. I have been swamped, but I will write you back, okay? All right.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So happy to have you.
How are you, Derek? This is David.
David, we are delighted to have you. And we're just waiting a few moments for the students and folks to come in. And Bonnie's going to start us.
Okay.
And you'll be our first speaker.
Okay, awesome. Do you have a sort of a time frame you want me to try to stick within? Because I can do it in 2 minutes, 15 minutes, 7 hours. I know I've done the 7-hour version, but
we probably, yeah. So what, about 10 minutes?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
How many folks are going to join us today?
Well, we sent it out. We did a blast to a lot of people, and we'll see.
Okay, awesome.
We sent it out.
Go ahead. I was gonna say that we are also broadcasting on YouTube, and sometimes we get people to watch through our YouTube channel and not on the Zoom call.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's why it's kind of hard sometimes to tell how many people are actually watching live.
You guys have a popular group, I think. Is this your first event of the semester?
Oh yeah.
We've been rolling. We've been rolling with this Zoom thing for the whole summer. We had our summer camps were all virtual, so we're glued to these seats, and it's really it's a scary thing, you know.
I know.
My ankles have been swollen for a month now, and I just can't seem to get them to. I got to get up more. I just got to get out, do something different.
Yeah, it's funny with these Zoom meetings. You tend to just sit down all day as opposed to, and it's not good for you, as you say. So you gotta get up and walk around.
I was telling the students about the meeting we had with the police department. I think it was yesterday or the day before. It's a really fantastic meeting. So we're glad to have them on this call. And I would imagine, because this is such a new experience for the university, for students, faculty, for everyone, that we'll probably have a series going. You know, we won't bother people to be on each one, but as it makes sense, you know, as things happen, we just want to make sure that parents, you know, can put their finger on the pulse of what's happening because their children are here. We've got some students from as far away as California.
Right.
And you can imagine if you're a parent, just not being able to get here quickly. It's good if you
Exactly.
can jump on a Zoom line, ask questions, and even for our officers, I know that you have a policy where as you're available, people can reach out to you as well. And I
Right.
just want them to see everybody as part of a family.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to get through this together.
Hmm.
And all of our goals and hopes is that everybody is safe and that everybody has an educational experience while they're here. I would like to say have a great experience, but when you're studying engineering,
All
it
right.
it gets to be a little a little stressful. But we
Can-
definitely want you to be safe.
exactly. Exactly.
So I know that we haven't officially started, but I guess we should.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to
So
jump off of here in a minute. So Bonnie, were you going to do any introductions, or should I just go ahead?
I feel like you should just go ahead because what you just said is the perfect introduction. I just want to make sure that we are already live on YouTube. Are we?
We are.
Oh, okay, great. So, officially welcome to our first MEP Live event of the fall semester, and welcome back to those students who were already at Purdue. And we are very happy to have really important and key guests from the Purdue University community joining us today. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and move us along. Just to remind you, let's try to keep ourselves muted so that to avoid any background noise. And by all means, if you have any questions, feel free to either send it through the chat room or just go ahead and raise your hand using the raise hand feature. And lastly, I am going to introduce you to our director, is Mrs. Virginia Booth Womack, and she will go ahead and introduce the rest of the minority engineering program staff. And I forgot to say my name. My name is Bonnie Prado, and I am one of the graduate assistants with the minority engineering program here at Purdue University. Mrs. Womack?
And Bonnie, what are you studying and where are you from?
Thank you. I'm originally from Colombia, South America, and I am a PhD candidate about to graduate. Yoo-hoo, finally. Uh, from the School of Aeronautics and Astronautics here at Purdue University.
All right.
Thank you.
That's
Greetings,
great.
greetings to everyone from the beautiful island of Aruba. As you can
Whoa.
see, the water's in the background. As soon as I get off this call, I'm going to jump out there and continue my evening suntan. You know that I'm kidding. That's a virtual background, but it does make me feel like I've gotten away. I've gotten away from Purdue for a minute, and I appreciate Zoom for having that facade that we can sort of pretend. I guess they knew how hard it would be to do virtual all day. But thank you for tuning in to MEP, both those that are on the Zoom call and those that will be joining us through YouTube. We are in a historic year. um, I consider what we're going through now in the world as a world crisis, and we're moving day by day, minute by minute, and making decisions as we go, with every intention to um, have an experience for students that feels like college, knowing that we're also keeping our finger on the pulse of health and issues that are going on in the state and in the country. So we have some key people here to talk to us about our safety practices, about how we're going to deal with any type of issues that come up. We have our police force. I met with not only the Purdue Police, but Lafayette Police, and also the Indiana State Troopers. Everybody is on the same page, wanting to make sure that students have a great experience and that we handle anything that comes up in a way that's safe and in a way that's also showing that we are a community and we are a village and we all care about the students that are here and we understand the issues around Black Lives Matter and how that affects Black
Yeah,
students in particular. And my focus is on any
literally.
underrepresented minority student that goes to Purdue. I even
Mm-hmm.
focus on any student that feels marginalized or like, they just feel like they're not connected. I even have white students that feel that way. So we try to provide a service just to make sure students are connected and that they know this is an extended family. So I won't be with you long today because I have another meeting, but I did want to introduce myself and make sure that you know that we're here. We will have more than this one meeting. So just be on the lookout for session invites. If there's ever an emergency, we'll have emergency meetings and we'll shoot out to our whole population that we are going to have a meeting. And again, they will be on YouTube as well. So if you miss a meeting, you can always go to YouTube and catch what we were doing. So I'm going to turn it back over to Bonnie and she'll take us into the next part of this talk.
Thank you, Mrs. Womack. And I also would like to introduce, just like you can see on the slide presentation, our newly named Associate Director, Dr. Jacqueline Gatson. She's not on the call right now, but I just want to shout out to everybody who makes this possible. Dr. Carol Stuale, Mary Kenner, Mrs. Heather Core, and Ms. Tamara Markey. And then last but not least, the person who actually put this together, which is Mr. Derek Williams. Derek, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. We are so happy to have you guys here today, and we're especially happy to have our guests. First of all, we have David Broker, who is from the Protect Purdue implementation team.
Cool.
His official role, David's official role is the Chief Innovation and Collaboration Officer over in PRF, the Purdue Research Foundation. He is joined by John Cox, the Chief of Police. John's going to be talking to us second, and he's brought Captain Song Kang with him. So the very first question, and we just like to hear from the Protect Purdue implementation team, because we're coming into this new situation, and we want all the students to feel safe and secure in this environment. So the overall question that we're looking at right now is, can students feel safe in this new environment? David?
Thanks, Derek, and thanks, Bonnie, and thanks, Virginia, for inviting me to participate in your first event of the semester here. It really is fantastic. It's starting to feel like the campus is coming back together. As you mentioned, my day job used to be the Chief Innovation and Collaboration Officer in the Purdue Research Foundation. I almost forgot what that job was all about because for the last I actually added it up today. It was 115 days ago when President Daniels brought together, at that point, the Safe Campus Task Team that was made up of a lot of the faculty members. This is now going all the way back to end of April timeframe, and they came up with a whole list of over 100 recommendations. And there, April, I think it was 29th, several of us with President Daniels and others locked ourselves in a room literally for the day and went through all of the recommendations and ideas and thoughts that were generated through that process. And it really has been, it seems like a year ago, but really in that 15 or so days, we've tried to make every day count. And it's been a true team effort. I can't be prouder of the task teams and the task team leaders. When we take a step back and look at what we've done, I think we've created, a safe environment. There's lots of engineering kinds of things that you guys would all, given your backgrounds and interests, obviously, in courses of study, would be, interested in everything from, how to make a classroom safe, how to make a residential dorm area safe, how to do dining. We created a virtual health center called the Protect Purdue Health Center. We've, explored what we should be doing from a testing standpoint. And obviously we worked then with the Veterinary School of Medicine to convert one of their animal labs to a COVID testing lab. So it really has been a lot of work. We've all been putting in, 12 to 15-hour days, but seeing the students come back on campus literally in the last week puts a smile on all of our faces. You can't see it because we're all wearing masks, but it does put a smile on our face. We've been waiting for this day, and so we've all got a little butterflies, I think, in our stomach as we start the semester, because we don't know exactly how it's going to go. But we have, obviously high expectations that it's going to go very, very well. One thing that I have learned, and is, in this past 115 days, is, COVID is COVID. It changes all the time. It seems like every 2 or 3 weeks something's happening. And I think actually one of the strengths of our plan is its adaptability and its flexibility. We've really tried to, stay focused on not just developing quote unquote one plan, but really developing a plan that's based on capabilities and processes that can, flex or adapt as necessary. And I think that, one of the clear examples of that was the decision we made in early July to test all of the students coming back to campus as part of their pre-arrival to moving back into dorms or starting classes next week. When we started the task team efforts, that was not part of what we said or thought we needed to do. But clearly, with what had happened at the end of June occurring across the country, we realized that with 35,000 plus students, half of whom were going to be coming from other parts of the United States, that was the smart thing to do. At its heart, Derek, the question you ask about, is the campus safe? And this really gets to what I think is the most important part of the plan, and it's the thing that maybe gets overlooked probably because everybody sees plexiglass and tents and things like that across campus, but it really is this notion of the pledge. I think that the pledge is the cornerstone of our program. It is so important because when you look at what's going to keep us all safe, both as individuals and protect one another and protect our community, it really is trying to drive towards a new set of behaviors more than anything. Until a vaccine's developed, until new therapeutics are developed, it really is incumbent upon all of us to do what we have to do with regard to, the things you hear every day and things that have hopefully going to start to become good habits and good behaviors going forward. Things like wearing a mask, things like keeping safe distances, things like, practicing good hygiene, whether that's hand washing or keeping your work areas or your living areas, clean and tidy. Another very, very important thing is if you have any symptoms or feel like you're getting sick as a result of the virus, you have to stay away from one another. Essentially, call then the Protect Purdue Health Center, report your symptoms, and we've got a dedicated team of professionals that are going to figure out what needs to get done, whether that's testing or whatever. I know in my work life, many times I've gone to work probably when I shouldn't have, when I had symptoms, but in the new normal of COVID, we just can't afford to do that because we could expose other people unnecessarily. So, this notion of the pledge of protecting ourselves, protecting others, protecting our community, that's really the foundation and the rock of our plan. And it was mentioned by Virginia, it's going to take all of us to get through this. Doesn't matter who we are, whether we're students, whether we're faculty, whether we're staff, we all have to help one another. The pledge too is meant to be a sort of a golden rule of what the new normal is, and it's not meant to be a stick where people are you throw a penalty flag for somebody for not wearing a mask. It's really meant to be a framework to provide coaching and feedback to one another. I can't tell you as I've been on campus how many times I've just seen students respond. My favorite example is we were doing one of our very first days of testing or doing sampling for the Summer Start program. This would have been in July 8th or 9th. and we were in the McCutcheon parking garage. And on that Friday afternoon, we just had a horrible rainstorm, absolute horrible rainstorm in the morning, and wind, rain. It actually knocked out a transformer. I mean, it was just like it was awful. And I went in to see what we needed to do to sort of help the team that was checking in and testing all of those students. And they had what they needed. So I walked to the far end of the parking garage, and I was sitting in the stairwell checking my emails because it was pouring down rain and I didn't want to walk back to the convergence center. And I could hear a woman coming down, a student coming down the stairwell of the parking garage. She was talking on her phone. And so I had my mask on, checking my emails. And she was talking on her phone. She didn't have a mask on, and all she did was look at me. And she said on the phone, she said, "Oh, wait a second, I forgot my mask." And she turned around, walked back up 3 flights of stairs, and came back down. She had her mask on. I didn't have to say a word. All she did was see me doing what I was doing and recognize that she had forgotten her mask. So to me, that's really the power of the example, that we as leaders, all of us are leaders, that we should be setting that example for everyone and providing the coaching and feedback around it. So to me, that's what's going to make the difference about keeping our campus safe, and helping one another. It really is going to take all of us working together in order to be successful.
You're on mute.
Whoops.
Derek, you were muted, so we couldn't hear you.
All right. All right. Well, before we move further, I'm wondering, are there any rebuttals or any comments that we can address immediately? Because I think it's really important as students and parents that you do feel safe. So if there's something that maybe hasn't been addressed so far, uh, go ahead and take yourself off mute. And I'd like for you to ask David right now, while we're on the subject of feeling safe and secure.
I do. I have a question,
Sure.
and this may be something someone else may want to know too. David, I did find out from the police that there won't be, in the event of students that don't have on their protection, there won't be a police presence in the classrooms to correct that, that is coming out of the dean of students office. And can you describe what that process may look like, and how it will be handled, and what, if any, reprimand can that bring to the student? And by that, I would hate for it to end up being a reprimand that goes in their file and is punitive, or because we just have a lot of things that could happen. So can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
No, it's a good question. And I know that, over the course of the summer, when we started to roll out some of our actions and activities, I know that there were a lot of questions about, well, wait a second, how's this going to be enforced? What's compliance look like? And in particular, I mean, I point to the whole question about masks, for example, in the classroom. I know that there were some early discussions about what happens if a student, comes to class without a mask. And the reality is, as you said, the expectation is we're not going to have police, anybody from the police department in there to enforce it. And again, that's why this notion of the pledge, I think, is so important, is that, I would hope that anybody would have the opportunity, if, let's say, David Broker as a student walked into one of the classes without a mask, for the faculty member to certainly feel like they have the opportunity to say, hey, David, you need to put your mask on. And I would hope that, the 50 kids in the class would similarly say the same thing. And if David Broker can't get that message because he's either got a faculty member telling him that, or the other students, and and in that situation, if David literally didn't have a mask, maybe someone in the class could have a mask and the second mask and give it to him. But I think this really gets to that notion of, we got to help each other through that situation. If for whatever reason David Broker becomes a problem in that kind of scenario, I would expect everybody to basically walk out of the class. David Broker cannot disrupt, as an individual, the activities of the other 50 plus people in that classroom. As you say, it would then obviously get reported to the, if again, in this extreme situation where I didn't get that message that I had to put a mask on, it would carry over into the Dean of Students office. And obviously then there's a, review and punishment process. I think, you're actually seeing it play out in real time today and yesterday based on some of the activities of the last 24, 48 hours where we reinforced this expectation that, the pledge really means something and that we have to protect one another and protect our community and around this notion of parties and events and gatherings. And I think folks saw what happened last night with regard to, unfortunately, one of our co-op units. And now those students are in a process of being reviewed to understand, what their violation of that pledge is going to look like. So, we all have to take this seriously. Unfortunately, there are probably going to be some examples, Virginia, where people either don't get the message, like me, as the example I said, going into the classroom, or others, doing things that are putting other folks in harm's way. But that's what's going to keep us all safe. So, I hope, I'm a coach. I'm a former football coach and worked with kids and that type of thing. I'm not a faculty member or teacher, but I believe that if you tell individuals what's expected of them and then coach and provide feedback towards that they will get that message. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't. And then in those situations, you've obviously got to deal with it appropriately. And right now that's going to be dealt with, as I said, through the Office of the Dean of Students.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask, if are the students put out of school for breaking the rule, or is there a process, or?
You mean for the one that just happened recently, or
Just in general, if a student were to, they didn't honor the pledge, failed to honor the pledge, or a group of students?
Yeah, well, I think you're seeing that play out in real time. That we had folks there were 36 people implicated in the event last night, and they have now been dismissed from the school pending review of their case and ultimately what their punishment is going to be. But that's going to be a timely. There's a process. We obviously have to follow the right process, and that process is now playing out. But Derek, to your point, it's going to get dealt with one way or another. I don't know because I'm not part of that process.
Right,
What the
right.
ultimate answer is going to be there. But those folks were clearly violating the pledge as we had defined and as we had articulated or re-articulated literally that same day. And unfortunately, the situation occurred, and now we've got to figure out exactly what's going to happen to those students.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. And David, I'm going to let you take a stab at it first,
Okay.
and then we're going to move on to John. How is Purdue ensuring our students' safety and security during the pandemic?
Well, as I said, we've talked a lot about the pledge, and I think going forward in the course of the academic semester that's about ready to start, we've done a lot of preparation and planning now for not only testing people to come to campus, but tomorrow it will be announced what our surveillance testing is going to be going forward. So it's not, we're going to continue to, over the course of the semester, have a random testing surveillance program, which monitors for increases in the infection rate across the campus. This is something that's been designed with the help of faculty members to help us figure out, what the appropriate sample size for that is. But that's going to be one element to figuring out, what is happening across campus. I think as people have seen, we've tested over 30,000 students already coming back to campus, and our base infection rate is less than 1%. I think the last statistics of today were it's at 0.72%, which is a great sort of starting point coming in. That was done to basically have people that were infected to be isolated away from campus so that it didn't start to tap into our available isolation space, which we're obviously creating here on campus for the semester. We've created the Protect Purdue Health Center as a single point health center for anyone that feels like they're having symptoms. There's now over 60 people that work in that Protect Purdue Health Center. It's led by Dr. Esteban Ramirez. He's the medical director for the Protect Purdue Health Center. And the 60 people that he has in that group are a combination of case managers who would oversee and manage each case as it presents itself, as well as contact tracing individuals. And these would be then people that would need to determine if I'm around someone who has been infected and I have what's called a close or high risk contact to that individual, then obviously I would get called and potentially either be tested myself or asked to quarantine as a result of that close contact. So there's going to be an ongoing health management monitoring program in addition to that surveillance testing. In addition, if someone does, for example, get infected, test positive, and need to be isolated, I mentioned we have isolation space on campus. We have about 550 beds right now, mostly over in the Purdue West Village, which would be available to students where they would have to go and be isolated from the rest of their roommates and fellow students. They would probably be there for about 10 days. They would be monitored, obviously, by that Protect Purdue Health Center. But in addition to having a case manager assigned from the health center, there's going to be an academic case manager that's also assigned. That person would then help that individual from managing then the academic side of them being over there for the 10 days, but switching over to doing online courses, making sure that they got whatever other support they need. We recognize as well that there's potentially going to be obviously people being isolated. There's the chance for people to have perhaps some mental health conversations and needs that need to be addressed. So again, part of the total support is not only providing and caring for the health of the individual, but the mental health of that individual, as well as the academic support. So those are all of the things that have gone into the preparation. And as I said, all of the task teams working together to put together that sort of integrated program to make sure that people are going to be safe and secure throughout the course of the semester.
Great, great. So, and now we ask the same question to our Chief of Police, John Cox.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you all for participating tonight. We're honored to be a part of this, and we appreciate the invitation. And so, as your University Police Department, we are part of the overall umbrella of environmental health and public safety. That particular unit on campus is comprised of our police department, our fire department, our safety and security department, fire protection engineering, and our radiological environmental management. And so, our normal when our students are on campus is to be in that Protect Purdue mode. This pandemic has just added a very interesting twist to the way that we operate that now. So we still are providing all of the same services, but just have gone into different modes. For example, a lot of our programming is now gone virtual, just like this. We get a lot of requests for our de-escalation training and our SAFE program, which is our intro to self-defense for our females on campus. And so we, like all of you, have had to adapt to where we are today. And so with that being said, we are also have been one of the units that has been here since many students left last March. Unfortunately or fortunately, this is like a medium-sized city most of the year round. And we have all of the same problems. and all of the same advantages that a medium-sized city would have. And part of that is the need for the public safety on campus. Research never stops. This is a 24-hour university, and so we are here with our fire department and other pieces to our public safety and infrastructure teams that keep the lights on and the air cool and the water running, and no matter what's going on. So with that being said, we have implemented a number of things, and a lot of it came out of David's programmatic reviews with his other teammates early on, and our police department looks different now, inside and out. We have plexiglass barriers and the other things that we had to install to be able to not only keep each other safe in here, but when we are still taking care of the normal police business that we typically would. If we have victims or witnesses or people on our department that we're interviewing, we have to provide those safety measures for them as well, to keep them safe, keep us safe. Our dispatch center was an interesting adventure in getting it ready. For those of you that do not know, our police department has our dispatch center in it, and we also host the West Lafayette City Police Department's dispatch center inside of our building. Just a few short years ago, they needed a place to land their dispatch center, and we partnered with them. And so now our center has grown, and on one side of the room is the West Lafayette City Dispatch Center, and the other side is the Purdue University Police Department dispatch. So we also had to figure in how to get our city partners on board with the changes that we needed to make inside of our facility. And so all of those things went very well. And then what you see on the outside, our officers are cleaning their vehicles more often. When we are working with our public, we have to be very careful about how we do that. But we're also very aware that we need to speak clearly, loudly, because being masked up sometimes makes communication a little more difficult. And we certainly want to be clear when we're out with our public. We want to be clear about what we're saying. We want to be able to be clear on what our public is saying or asking. So there are a number of those things that we have changed to be able to help protect Purdue and continue to provide the public safety services that we have. So that is kind of in a nutshell what we have done. If anybody has any particular questions, I'm happy to ask that. Or I want to introduce Captain Song Kang. Captain Kang is one of my two division captains that I have here at the police department. My senior leadership team is made up of Deputy Chief Keen Red Elk, Captain Kang, and Captain Leslie Weedy. And the three of them assist me in the operation of the department. And Captain Kang and his team had a huge part in preparing the department and getting the PPE and the supplies that we needed to not only take care of us in the very beginning in March and April, when we really didn't know a whole lot about this virus. We were all doing everything we could because we didn't know. And his team has shifted as the university has shifted to get where we are now. So I want to thank Captain Kang for being on as well. So Song, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Good evening. Yeah, I think Chief Cox made a good point that since our operation continued, even when the university shut down, our building was a sample case for the university to make sure that what it would look like when the business would return normalcy, like today. So we made a lot of effort. We had multiple visits and conferences and plenty of WebExes, as you all know. And so far, I mean, we are very happy with what we have achieved. And that was also because of the support of the university, because when the entire world was experiencing the shortage of N95, the university community came together and the REMs said, you know, the first responders, we have N95 for you so that you can help others. So we were very supported by the various departments within the university. So that we're very grateful for that.
That's great. Now we're going to move on to our last question. This question is, how can we ensure the safety and security of Blacks and other underrepresented students on the Purdue campus? So now we're moving to addressing the elephant in the room. So we thought we'd just go ahead and address it.
That's great. And we're happy to. Certainly, working at the university is a wonderful experience. It offers all of us the opportunity to work in an environment where we get to experience cultures and the diversity of the entire world. It also brings along others that might be in the community that don't respect the diversity. And so part of what the University Police Department is we try to meet the needs of all of our students, staff, and faculty and visitors here on campus. We try very hard, first of all, to do that by trying to mirror the community that we serve. I'm very fortunate to have the diversity on my team that I do. And as I mentioned a while ago, the diversity in the very senior leadership team that runs this department. So I think that's important to this university. I think, second of all, we have to be open and transparent with our community about our policies and our practices. For those that do not know, we are a CALIA accredited agency. We are in that 1 to 2% of the police agencies across the world that hold this accreditation. There is only one other agency in the state of Indiana that holds that. And there is only, I believe, 4 Big Ten universities that have that accreditation. So we're very pleased to have it, and we're very proud of it. And what that means for our community, especially our underrepresented minority and students of color, is that we have a set of operational guidelines that dictate how our officers will act and react in almost every situation that you can imagine. So we have not only a good set of controls, but we have a great set of expectations. And we hold our officers accountable to those expectations that are called general orders. We've recently gone through a review of some of those, including the duty to intervene and use of force. This department does not use chokeholds. This department doesn't train in that. We have spent a lot of time crafting our general orders, making sure that they adhere to the best practices and also adhere to the laws of the state of Indiana, and also to make sure that they meet the needs of our Purdue community. So we strive to do the very best we can. I think one of the things that we see that could help us to have a better and more open communication with our students is to just put ourselves out there and be available. We've recently restarted our police bike program. I think it's important that our community sees police officers outside of a vehicle and not sitting behind the glass window all the time. I think it makes it easier to engage those officers, and I think that's going to be an important step in continuing to build the relationship and the trust of our communities of color. I also think that we understand that everybody comes with their own biases and their own lenses from wherever they come from. I don't know where you all came from, and I don't know what you have experienced, and some of you may have experienced very poor service from a law enforcement agency, and for that we are sorry that you had to experience that. But what we are excited about is the opportunity to introduce you to the Purdue University Police Department. And along with that, as mentioned earlier, Virginia mentioned, we worked with Dr. Gates and pulled together in the first time, and I'm going to age myself, first time in 33 years that I know of being a police officer in this county, that we have ever pulled the lieutenant of the ISP district post, the Tippecanoe County Sheriff, the West Lafayette City Chief, the Lafayette City Chief, and myself together with Dr. Gates's groups and direct reports in our cultural centers. And it was a fantastic experience, and everybody seemed energized and excited to continue those types of team building and relationship building adventures. So I look forward to the opportunity to continue to meet our students. And I ask our students, our faculty, and our staff to be good reporters. One of the things that this police department often finds itself in is finding out about situations 24, 48, hours later after the occurrence, sometimes not reported for a week. And so underreporting and timely reporting, those are things that we talk about a lot. And the underreporting of some of the incidents, I can tell you that many of our students, of our international students, vastly underreport being the victims of different things such as property crimes and other types of crimes in the state of Indiana. So we encourage through dialogue our international community to report. I know that there is some angst in the international community because of some of the things that have gone on across the United States and some of the different federal agencies, and there's a real angst, and I understand that. But we try to let our community know that the Purdue University Police Department is here to serve Purdue University and the community, and so that they should try. We hope that they feel comfortable approaching us, and then our students of color and our underrepresented minority students. Again, it's about building that trust. It's about working with our cultural centers to build that trust and to try to create that two-way dialogue that makes them feel comfortable coming into the police department or meeting with a police officer out there on the street to report those things that they have been victimized or are concerned about. Captain King, do you have something that you'd like to add to that?
No, the topic itself is a very tall order. I think that's why we put great focus on hiring the right officer, knowing the unique nature of the campus police department. You have to fit well to meet our organizational mission to serve the campus community, the students, faculty, and that's why our candidates get vetted by the campus partners. I still remember even the promotions, and I still remember 3 years ago, basically presenting my vision to the campus partners, including cultural center representatives and various department heads of the campus, to show them and demonstrate what kind of philosophy I bring to the table. And throughout my career here at Purdue, for 20 years, every chance I get, I educate and try to inform fellow officers about what I know, which is born in outside of the United States, raised, educated, and what kind of resources, what kind of commitment, what kind of courage it takes to travel halfway around the world to settle here for a better future. So, but at the same time, Chief Cox often says, what we don't know, we don't know. So now is a perfect time for us to listen and reflect and make any changes to better serve the community, to break down the barrier. And as Chief Cox said, to have that dialogue. We want to get to know you, and we ask you to tell us what we need to know. So that's the point that I'd like to bring.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we are opening the floor for
Derek, you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You sound very low. So whatever you did, undo it.
Well, I just turned my volume up. Can you hear me now? Okay. Bonnie, am I very low?
Yeah, but
Bonnie, go ahead and take over the questions as well. I can see if I can figure this out. I'll
okay.
open the floor for questions. Thank you.
I think you're good now. I think we just want to first thank all of our speakers for very great information that was shared with us today, and I would like to open up the floor to the audience. I know this is very intriguing. These are very intriguing times. We're about to go back to campus on Monday, and we don't know what's going to happen. Everybody is kind of hesitant. And so if you have any questions or if there are any parents out there that are worried about their children coming to campus, this is the opportunity for you to talk to some very key people that will make decisions that would affect us all. So if there are any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself or just post them on the chat room. Also, Vivek, can you check to see whether we have any questions from the YouTube? All right, Mr. Russell, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Russ McClymont. Want to talk a little more about the testing and the tracing. We recently saw at UNC and in Notre Dame about some outbreaks and some clusters where they actually shut the campus down. Talk to us about your testing mechanisms in terms of thresholds you may have to manage potential clusters and when you may have to change your tactics and shut down.
Russell, this is David. Great set of questions there. So one of the reasons why we created, the Protect Purdue Health Center is really to have a single point to manage all of that. One of the things that we quickly saw was that, if some people go to the Student Health Center, some people go to the Center for Healthy Living, other people are, accessing other healthcare across, greater West Lafayette or Lafayette area, that it would be hard to manage because there's lots of coordination across all those multiple systems. And there still will be a certain amount of that, don't get me wrong, but having sort of a common place for everybody to go in the Protect Purdue Health Center is obviously very, very important. What would happen again, use an example, let's say David Broker is a student at Purdue. I have symptoms. I report to the Protect Purdue Health Center. They call me in or want me to get tested. I go and get tested and I test positive. Now I would have to be isolated. And I would go over to the Purdue Village and I would be put in a room. As I said, it would probably be about 10 days that I would be over there, and I would be, obviously food would be brought to me. And as I said, I'd be assigned not only a health case manager, but an academic case manager, and I'd be dealt with that way. But then that would start what would be called a contact tracing process. As you alluded to. Now, one of the things that we've implemented on campus is, most contact tracing takes place just literally with an interview. It would start with my interview. People would want to know like who's my roommate is, who my girlfriend would be, who I would consider to be some of my own close contacts, and then a contact tracer in the Protect Purdue Health Center would get on the phone and immediately start contacting those people. Now, in the process of contacting, patient confidentiality, in this case, my name wouldn't necessarily be disclosed to those individuals, but it would be explained to them that they may have come in contact with someone who's tested positive. Clearly, my roommate and my girlfriend would probably already know that. So some of this, is going to get known by those that are really, really close, but maybe people in my class, maybe my lab partner, or other people that might be beside me in the lab. It might not be it wouldn't be disclosed necessarily that it was me. So that would start the process, Russell. And then depending upon whether it was felt like those were what's considered a high risk contact. And again, high risk is a combination of exposure in close proximity, but also duration. Casual sort of interactions with people do not necessarily automatically trigger contact tracing situation. We are a testing situation. We also have across campus ability to see who might be through connection to Wi-Fi access points. You know, there's a lot of technology that was rolled out or in terms of like tracking people. We're not necessarily tracking people 24/7, but we do know within certain areas, whether that's the classroom, whether that's the dining hall, that type of thing, who might also have been in that general vicinity. And again, those people would be probably contacted as a part of the contact tracing. So all of this would get managed through the Protect Purdue Health Center. And another reason why we want to, you know, try to centralize or create this single health center is because speed matters. What we've seen, the success in other countries and in other situations is the ability to rapidly, you know, understand who's infected, isolate them, and then do quick contact tracing around those people, and then if necessary, test and isolate those. So speed matters. It's estimated that, you know, most people would be probably in the 5 to 10 range in terms of contact traces that would be deemed, you know, close contacts. So that's kind of the order of magnitude of what might happen in an individual case or situation. We don't necessarily have articulated specific trigger points per se, because it's obviously a very multifactorial kind of process. You know, not only, and that's why things like the surveillance testing plan needs to be factored into this. The amount of space that we have in the isolation areas that we've set aside needs to be factored into this. What's happening, you know, in other potential hotspots across the campus needs to be factored into this. So all of those things would be looked at together. And then obviously, if things really started to get bad in all of those types of areas, then we'd obviously have to make some hard decisions about, you know, going to an online, you know, for the campus or what have you. But we, as I said, we don't necessarily have a specific number. You mentioned and alluded to the Notre Dame example and the North Carolina example. In the case of Notre Dame, we know a lot about their program because here in Indiana, you know, the folks down at Indiana University, myself at Purdue, and folks at Notre Dame, we've been comparing notes, you know, throughout the course of you know, all of our planning activities. And what happened at both Notre Dame and what happened at North Carolina were some off-campus activities and parties and events that occurred, particularly on that first weekend or the first couple weekends, when, in the case of Notre Dame, when they were back. And unfortunately, those off-campus events involved a lot of people. You know, we're talking on the order of 50 people to some of these parties. And then that was all brought back onto campus. And that's really what led to the last 48 hours of discussion across campus, was reminding people that these off-campus events were, you know, a source of risk. And it doesn't take that many in order for it to obviously have a you know, a potentially bad effect on the campus in the case of particularly North Carolina. And so that went into that clarification of what the code of conduct is, particularly around the pledge and around off-campus events, in particular parties. And unfortunately, we had that incident last night with the co-op living unit. So Russell, these are all of the things that we're constantly monitoring, looking at, actively, you know, working not only what we're doing, but we have our, you know, eyes and ears open for learning from other places, other situations, other examples. So.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Derek, you're still a little light, or little. There you go. There you go.
Is that better?
That was better.
Okay. We have a question from Helga. What are you doing about finding asymptomatic students with COVID?
So, you know, asymptomatic is really going to be picked up in two ways. As I alluded to, probably through contact tracing. We will probably find a lot of asymptomatic individuals. Obviously, that would be triggered by a symptomatic case, but depending upon who that person has been in close contact with, there might be some other people that would lead us to testing of asymptomatic individuals. The other way we're going to pick up and understand what's happening is through the surveillance testing that I mentioned in the early part of the call, that we're going to do random surveillance testing. It's going to involve about 10%, and based on the statistics that we've looked at, every week we're probably going to be testing about 10% of the student body, both on campus as well as in off-campus locations. And that's going to also help us understand what that base level of infection is across the community. But in the course of doing that, we will probably find obviously infected individuals. And if someone does test positive through that surveillance testing program, then obviously they would be pulled into this. And I would guess that 9 times out of 10, the people that are test positive in that surveillance testing are going to be asymptomatic as well. So those are the two major ways we're going to find asymptomatic cases.
Yes, we have a question from a parent. Will students receive medical assistance while in isolation?
Absolutely. So if they're in isolation, there's a whole plan and program to take care of them. There's going to be food brought to them 3 meals a day. There's going to be an academic counselor, as I mentioned. Not only with their physical health, they'll be called certainly by probably multiple times over the course of the day and ask about whether if they had symptoms, whether their symptoms are resolving, or if they didn't have symptoms, are they starting to develop symptoms? So through that case manager, there will be regular contact over the course of the day. That's the physical health part of it. If anybody needs mental health support, that would also be provided. Again, think of that case manager as your key contact for anything related to the medical care. If for whatever reason you needed outside medical care, Dr. Ramirez would then obviously be pulled into this, and as a physician, he would obviously evaluate the patient. And again, if something even worse than that happened and the person needed to be sent to outside the isolation area, to the hospital, what have you, then all of that care would be coordinated. Just again, to let folks know, we've had ongoing discussions throughout this time period with our local hospital and chief medical officers. We've also had conversations with the county health commissioner, Dr. Adler. And in fact, on Monday of this week, we've now moved from every other week conversations and discussions to literally daily meetings. So at 9:30 every morning, we get together with our respective counterparts at the hospitals and the county, and we talk about what's happened, what are they seeing, what are we seeing, because we really want to be integrated and seamless in terms of the care that we might need to provide to our students and faculty.
All right, we have another question. At what point will families have the option to bring their students home from medical care?
They would always have that option. If someone, tests positive, and again, the decision is made that they need to go into isolation. If they wanted to go home, and if their family was, wanted that to happen as well, we would clearly make, make that happen. I live in Zionsville area, for example. My wife and I, we don't have anybody at Purdue, but we kind of did the thought experiment. I think for my wife, she would look, she's a former nurse. So she would, she would go pick, our kid up at Purdue University, because it's only an hour away, and bring him home and take care of it, because that's just, her personality. And if there's any other family sort of situation like that, we would certainly accommodate that.
Thank you. Thank you. So the floor is open, and also we're talking about COVID, but the subject is also Black at Purdue. So we want to make sure, if you have any question or any concern, feel free to express that. Either take yourself off mute or put it in the chat. We'll go another 10 minutes if we need to. We'll be happy to.
I have a quick question. and maybe it's because I dialed on late, but what is the school doing to keep the parents abreast of what's going on with any COVID infection rates there?
Great question. And literally, we're about ready to publish our dashboard. I think it's either going to go up tomorrow. I think it's going out tomorrow. And so the focus up to this point has really been on that test all, if you will, of all returning students. And I know we've issued a few press releases related to that. The latest statistics, as I shared earlier, are we've tested over 30,000 students, again, prior to their arrival on campus. And the infection rate amongst or within that sort of testing program is less than 1%. It's 0.72%, I think was today's number. So we're coming in with a very low infection rate from all of these students coming to campus from all over the country, and in certain situations all over the world. So we feel very good about that low infection rate. And then as we go forward, all of the results that go through the Protect Purdue Health Center will be communicated. We have a public dashboard that, as I said, has been created. It's going to show how many tests are done each day, how many positive cases we have each day. It's going to present what our 7-day run rate is from a positivity or positive infection rate. It's probably going to communicate some other elements of our plan, including how many people we have in isolation and how we're utilizing those 550 beds that we have on campus. It's just going to point to as well some of the other critical elements of our plan, like how we're doing with inventories around our critical supplies. We identified over, I think it was 10 to 15 different items that we felt we needed to have at least 90 days worth of supply. This is things like PPE, test kits, that type of thing. So all of these things are going to be communicated. And as I said, I know that the first dashboard is, I believe, scheduled to go up tomorrow. So you'll start to see that.
Great. And one last question. So I know when I was dropping my son off, I saw a lot of procedures in place and the weather's nice and they can sit outside. What is going to happen when it's cold and they're no longer going to have that outside option?
Yeah, so as you said, the weather the last week and for next week and hopefully as long as we'll take it, the weather's been fantastic. And as you said, coming onto campus, we've set up a lot of outdoor areas because we know that if you're outdoors, the risk is reduced by 20-fold. And also that if you're out in the sunshine and with UV radiation, it also diminishes the risk. So we've tried to encourage and facilitate as much outdoor opportunities for students to sit, study, eat, congregate appropriately, practicing safe distances, etc. To your point, we know that there'll probably be a rainstorm come through, or as you say, later in more late September, October timeframe, it's going to get cold. As it relates to, and we're working to develop a lot of internal spaces as well that we're going to set up in order to sort of replace the outdoor places that we've created. I think one thing to note is in the dining areas, we are planning for a phased kind of process regarding dining. Right now, we're being very conservative and it's all grab and go model. And so students will, come to those dining halls, grab their food and go and sit in, those outdoor areas or take it back to their dorm area. We're also looking at setting up other indoor spaces, whether that's at the Armory, perhaps even Mackey Arena, some of the other bigger indoor spaces. We want to also set those up to be able to provide opportunity for students to go in there. And then as the course of the semester goes, we might be able to ultimately go back to having some in dining areas in the dining halls. But right now we're being very conservative and trying to make everybody go to a grab and go model.
Okay, we have another question. This question says, just want to confirm that if a student has an invalid test, that he can immediately get a COVID test at Purdue and get the results the next day within 24 hours. Then right after that, it says, Do we need to schedule the test at Purdue?
So as I alluded to, we have a lab on campus now that does testing. It's through the Veterinary College of Medicine, and the turnaround time for tests there is very good. It's about 24 hours. There might be a situation or two where it goes beyond 24 hours, but I would say 85% of the tests that are being processed through that vet school, 90% of the tests are being done in 24 hours. We've set up the T-Rec recreational area, which is the indoor sort of soccer field where there's two turf areas. We've set that now up as a walk-in sampling area. So if you have an invalid test result, and that happens occasionally, it's just the nature of these tests. You can get a positive result, you can get a negative result. Sometimes you'll get an invalid result, which means you have to get retested. But you could come to campus, you could go to the T-Rex, you could provide a sample. As you know, we're doing a lot of saliva testing now. It's not nasal pharyngeal swabs, so it's a saliva test. You'd produce and give the sampling group there your sample, and then that would be taken over to the vet lab. And like I said, within 24 hours, you could pretty much have a test. So if you came to campus on Saturday, you could get sampled and you would probably have a test result either on Sunday or Monday. Now, you couldn't move into the dorm because we're asking everybody to have a negative test result. So you might be put out one evening, have to stay in a hotel, but you can still come to campus and get tested. We've set that up, and they will be open over the weekend to accommodate that.
Great. I have another question if there isn't one posed by anyone else.
We don't have another question. Go ahead.
Okay. Again, I apologize for joining so late. Now, as a person of color, and my child is a person of color, I want to know what kind of relations are being set up to ensure open dialogue at the school, especially if this person happens to be a pro Black Lives Matter person.
So I'm happy to speak to, we spoke a little earlier about some of the things that we've already done with Dr. Gates and the Vice Provost of Diversity and Inclusion, pulling together that meeting with all local law enforcement department heads, including the Indiana State Police. We work very closely with the BCC and the LCC and our other institutions within the diversity and inclusion area like that. Again, we strive to communicate. We ask our community to report. We are an accredited agency, so we are very transparent with the operations that we use, and so we do a lot of programming. I've got staff that are attached to Lowell Cain Center, Renee Thomas's center. We've recently been very fortunate in our hiring process to attract Officer Gonzalez, who comes to us, and then also Officer Wilcher Smith, who is an African-American officer from Mississippi. And so we continue to build our own diversity within our organization to meet the needs of our community. And we're interested to meet our community, to learn about our community. And again, like I said earlier, we understand that everybody coming here comes from somewhere different with a different lens and a different perspective, and they've had different experiences, and some of those experiences may not have been good. And so we want to work to introduce our students, our staff, our faculty, our visitors to who we are, and also introduce you to our surrounding law enforcement agencies, because as you know, under non-COVID conditions, we have about 16,000 beds on our campus, and that is our area to patrol. So the majority of our students, both graduate and undergraduate, live off campus. They live in West Lafayette or in Lafayette or in Tippecanoe County. And so they'll be served by those law enforcement agencies. So we try to work closely with those agencies. We share reports. They share their reports with our Dean of Students Office. We have a lot of reporting mechanisms for hate bias We actually have a review team on this department that when we get those types of reports, that our hate bias review team reviews that to determine what other investigatory things we need to continue to do and how we're going to document that and then report that. And we are one of the few law enforcement agencies in Indiana that actually voluntarily report to some of the state and federal reporting functions that collect that kind of data.
And by that, you mean, is that a show of transparency? Yeah, so just for make sure to anyone who doesn't understand what's implied, because you're saying you're one of the very few.
Yeah, as far as reporting some of the hate and bias
Mhm.
reports, we work very closely with the dean's office. We work very closely with our Office of Institutional Equity. We work very closely with our centers, and we try to provide the services. We take reports. We, as our accreditation as a university police department, we even take third-party complaints and investigate those against our officers. So we try to be very open to anything and everything that the community has questions about and concerns about. Not all of the law enforcement agencies in the 9-district or 9-county area that make up this district are that transparent or that open. And so one of the things that we're proud of and we strive to, and we always know we can be better. We're not perfect, and we always look for input and ways that we can improve in the way that we serve our communities, and especially our communities of color and our communities, our underrepresented students.
Thank you very much. Any final questions or comments?
Yeah. So if there happens to be an incident with a person or persons of color and someone who may not be a person of color, is your practice to de-escalate versus just arresting everyone? Like, or what do you do if there's some kind of altercation?
So if I understand your question right, this would be an altercation that we would get a report of between a person of color and a non-person or a person.
Right. So if someone were to make a phone call, and again, and I'll just be frank, there's allegations being made, and phone calls are just being made on Black people just for living their everyday life.
Yeah.
And because we're unaware of this call, we may not react in such a normal way when confronted or accused of something. What are you doing in those situations when someone places a phone call about some kind of so-called, again, incident, altercation, or whatever it may be, to make sure that both sides are heard, but also to de-escalate it if it actually turns out to be something that merited a phone call?
No, great question. And you're absolutely right. That has happened and does happen. So to that point, we train, first of all of our officers are trained in de-escalation. We also have a Lieutenant Sarah Clark. One of her full-time jobs here is we have a de-escalation program that we train our university community partners with, whether there's a faculty group or we recently, Lieutenant Clark provided the training to the Renee Thomas and some of the folks under Dr. Gates's leadership over in diversity and inclusion. So yes, the first thing that we do is we go ask good questions. We don't assume anything. And if you're a good investigator, we'll never assume, but we'll ask good questions. And if there are tensions or if we are called to the scene where both individuals are still present, we absolutely will de-escalate it. We'll separate them. We'll talk to them. We'll find out what the story is, and then make decisions based on what that is. And if it is a situation where there's no state crime involved, but there may be a violation of a student conduct process or something like that, then we will refer that matter to that proper department. And we do spend a lot of time sharing reports and information with our dean of students, because oftentimes things that we come across with our students in conflict aren't, as you mentioned, they're not state law violations. They're a matter of personality, they're a matter of opinion. When a student, we have a student conduct code that's very clear. And so we will share that information with the dean of students and let that be handled at an administrative level, and the police department is no longer involved in that.
Thank you so much. Well, we want to take time to thank our special guest today. We've gotten some really good information. Thank you, Chief Cox, as well as Captain Song and David Broker. I've picked up a lot of information, and we certainly hope that this has been helpful to students and parents. We do have an upcoming event. We will have a series of MEP Live events this semester. So we want to make you students aware of our first back to school social, which is going to happen on Thursday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. Save the date. We will be sending out communication. Thanks again to our guests. Thanks for all of you who were able to participate. And if your friends missed it, tell them to watch it on YouTube. Everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. See you next time.
Derek, someone wants to say hello.
Hello. I know who that is. How are you doing?
Just ran away.
I saw this morning, I got on my email and I saw that you got on last night.
Was yesterday. He just ran off. He's such a goofball. But thank you for having this. This was wonderful, as always.
Good.
We miss you all. And as parents, we're so blessed to have the organization and the support that you give us. And now, I'm saying it as a second year, sophomore family. So
Right.
thanks again.